the climate space in Kenya? What challenges are we seeing? What sectors are dominant? And therefore, where should we channel the support for this? So this session, like Victor has said, is to encourage us to see, we have showcased innovations this week. How do we support these innovations to be able to scale into the future? As you know, the entrepreneurship ecosystem is not just about that entrepreneur, it's about also the organizations that are there to be able to support this entrepreneur from ideation all the way until they're at their growth stages. So today, at this session, for the next 2 hours or so, we'll be looking into that. How do we understand our ecosystem? How do we demystify sustainability for innovations? And then how do we talk about and demystify climate finance? What is that? And how can we be able to achieve that? So I will start off with just sharing this report, and then I'll be able to introduce our first panel that will be looking at that sustainability. And then we'll go into a second panel that will be talking about climate finance. And then we'll close out the session with any questions and reactions from the crowd. All right. If we could start, I don't know if you are ready. If not, I could just throw a couple of questions into the room. I'll ask, you can come to the forward, yes? Come to the forward. Come and sit up ambele. Hey. Nyinyi wote, just come and sit to the front. And then young man, you had your hand up. Did you have a question? Okay. I think to just get the conversation starting. When we talk about sustainability, what comes to our minds when we talk about sustainability? And I want to ask our young people here. Hi, Sunglasses, how are you doing? You're well? So when you talk about sustainability, how does that land in your mind? Does it even land? How do you understand sustainability? You think about long term. Awesome. How about yourself? You can repeat that, if you don't mind. You can repeat that and maybe expound further.
Okay, when I'm talking about sustainability, I think about the long-term event. For example, okay, let me talk about maybe climate change. Mm-hmm. If we're going to search for a solution about climate change, we need to check on the long-term solution, not the short-term solution. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to talk about the long-term solution. We need to see how that solution sticks around for the long term. Sounds good. Anybody else wants to react to that? We can develop that further. This young man has ideas. Some of our panelists here, what is sustainability and how do we break it down simply? Are we ready?
Oh, okay, fine. Well, I'm not a panelist.
That's okay.
So just to, not yet, but just to maybe give some thoughts. Yeah, I think when we think about sustainability, we are talking about solutions that will have a long-term impact and that will kind of carry us forward, and we can see those outcomes and those results continuing for some amount of time. And I think that's particularly important when we're talking about programs that, or outcomes from programs that are receiving funding. How do we make those outcomes last after the funding ends? So kind of creating an enabling environment and developing kind of a wider system that will continue to facilitate the success that we've achieved in order to make something sustainable.
Okay, big words, impact, then outcomes in the long term, and then how do you make it sustainable? In our market, I don't know, are our innovations ready, or are they organized for impact?
Well, I guess ready is always a bit of I think they're ready as ready as they can be, probably not organized or not structured. I think that's part of some of our role is to try and support and provide some of that structure and the right resourcing, but also recognize that individual entrepreneurs are struggling to get their business to work and perhaps at times missing that bigger picture because that's not where their mind is at. It is how do I drive, grow, scale my business within the confinement of what I have. And I think there's a need for ecosystem players that are looking at the ecosystem and looking how different businesses and different stakeholders are interconnected and will interconnect to build, the networks, the linkages that we see, and also knowing that when we talk about sustainability, a lot of it is business and firms and stakeholders having a need to talk and engage more with each other to create the sustainability, that it cannot be achieved in isolation and on our own. And that's really what is key here. So they're ready as they can be, and I think there's a need for other stakeholders to take a role in terms of making the connections.
Okay, they're as ready as they can be. So what I'm hearing is that we need to provide more structure as ecosystem support and help these businesses to create the structures that they need. Honing in on climate action, what kind of business models are we seeing, and have you been able to support them as ESOs? Maybe KCIC or KCIC or KVC can respond to that.
Well, what is clear is that there's a lot of diversification, and with diversification comes a lot of ideas and ways of doing things. And so some of the models that are coming through may be models that are not yet tested elsewhere, and they require a lot of patience to be able to demonstrate their impact potential, to be able to demonstrate their commercial potentials, and to be able to gain market traction. So those are three aspects which are critical for like Kenya Climate Ventures, which is an impact investor. And along that line is that demands a package of support. So not only investments, but also business growth support. And getting back to investments, it should be very appropriate and tailored. So the learning is that not one shoe fits all, because these startups and businesses are at different stages of development and different stages of evolution. The most important overriding factor there is to be patient with them, but while also declaring very specific timelines and milestones that have got to be achieved to show that there is traction, either market traction or just institutional progression, developing systems and aspects. He spoke about business growth support, and most importantly for me is how to prepare these businesses for let me say offtake, for continued support and investment. And so investment readiness, it's a very big word, and it means many things to many people. But I think just the basics around the ability of such businesses to attract additional funding of whatever nature. So if we want to remove investment readiness and say follow-on funding readiness, to me that's an important aspect, and that is the area where we work a lot alongside the accelerators and other enterprise support organizations. A last item is I think it's about the entrepreneur. So many people have spoken about the model, but for me a good model without a good entrepreneur is just a shell of undertaking. And a good entrepreneur can always make the best out of a model and make it work. So our focus as Kenya Climate Ventures, and of course the sister company Kenya Climate Innovation Center, is who is the entrepreneur? What's the drive for this entrepreneur? Are they living up to the standards that can attract stakeholders to them? So that's key. Yeah, and that defines the entire package, you know, the model, the support, and the success that people may want to see in the kind of businesses I think the other thing to mention is the package around climate. You know, right now, even if it's not real, people have talked about greenwash and all these aspects. So, and I think there has to be intention to really embed aspects of climate resilience, aspects of climate smart into the businesses, because that defines sustainability. Someone spoke about it, that it has to address livelihoods. Addressing livelihoods now must deal with the challenges of climate change. It's real with us. Yeah, that's what I can say now.
Thank you very much for sharing that. So I like that term, follow-on financing, because it's a place to de-risk this in innovations, these entrepreneurs, and then be able to follow on that first round of financing that they receive. Then we've talked about the support and the entrepreneur themselves. What are they made of? What is their motivation? And for me, I believe that motivation that drives the entrepreneur is the most important thing. It has to be beyond making profit. It has to be because it is impactful, and then that creates that motivation, and thus I kind of call it the wings, the air under the wings that they need to go for this trip that they're going to be going through. So thank you for that engagement, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like us to now turn to the report by the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. You can cue the slides for me. Thank you very much. So like we said, we are at the Innovate Nairobi Technology Week, where we are talking about sustainability, green climate innovation, and finance in Nairobi. The partners that are involved in bringing this session together are Growth Africa. Ian here, who is a co-founder of Growth Africa. You can wave, Ian, maybe for people to just see who you are. We have Aspen Network Development Entrepreneurs. That's me and Francis at the back. We have Sako Innovation. Sako Innovation, anybody there? Thank you very much. We have Sustainable Business Consulting. Thank you, Gladys. We have Circular Innovation Hub. All right, and these are the organizations that have come together to bring together this session today. I will be taking you through the Andy report. And these are the insights on green entrepreneurship in Kenya. This is a project that was sponsored by the IKEA Foundation. We ran this the whole of last year, looking at the state of green entrepreneurship in Kenya. What we saw is that sustainability and innovation will have to go hand in hand. We have problems that are specific to our markets, and therefore solutions have been specific to those problems that we have in our market. And because they're solving problems, how are we able to actually provide that continuity for these innovations that we have? And not just livelihoods, but climate change being such a mainstream problem, and being that we as Kenyans are experiencing it daily. I like to give this example. If you're Kenyan, you knew every January you'll get mangoes. Is that very certain anymore? Absolutely not. If you're going towards Western, I mean, the rifts are falling apart every now and then. The tarmacs have rifts. You can literally not cross that road. Things have changed, and climate change is a problem that we're encountering as Kenyans, and even here in Nairobi. So how do we bring solutions? And that's where the space for innovation comes in. So what Andy's report looked into is we were able to see the characteristics of green entrepreneurship in Kenya, the most active sectors, and in which sectors there's the greatest opportunity, the entrepreneurship service providers, that is the ESOs, how many are they, and how well organized are they to support. Then we looked at the key opportunities that they are, the challenges, and then the recommendations that we thought would be important for the ecosystem. So the first full report was really about building the green economy, what trends and opportunities are there in the entrepreneurship sector in Kenya. We are able to share this with you. If you would like to receive this report from Andy, kindly focus, let Francis know. Francis, you can raise your hand for people to see who you are, and we'll be able to share that report with you. Now, which were the most predominant sectors that we were able to find in Kenya? As you can see, we have about 12 of them. Under the low carbon energy, we saw that energy efficiency and storage and renewable energy, for example, solar, are the key subsectors under low carbon energy. Then in land management, which is great, as you all know, land is a huge issue in Kenya. We were able to see sustainable agriculture and aquaculture, for example, crop diversification and micro irrigation, sustainable forestry where there's conservation, they talk of that, reforestation, carbon sequestration, and afforestation. Then in transport, which is a key issue here in Nairobi, we were able to see how do we develop sustainable transportation, electric vehicles, charging infrastructure, and we've continually started seeing that, and I think it is even one of the exhibitors in this forum that is showcasing e-mobility. Water and waste management, under that there was the water management itself. What does that include? Collection, treatment, and supply of water. Then water management and circular economy. How do we separate waste? How do we take care of the solid waste, its sewage, and post-use processes? And as you know, these are problems that are very mainstream in any city, and this will be some of the key issues that Nairobi County will be dealing with. Then in building environment, there's the green buildings. How do we make our buildings more sustainable? Retrofitting, new builds, the materials that are used on there. And then disaster management, how do we develop monitoring and response systems? As you know, if a fire breaks out in Nairobi, it takes a while for these extinguisher trucks to get there. So how do we organize better to manage disasters? What is a spend in these markets? So we saw that there's a lot of money. There's 123 billion US dollars that is in green entrepreneurship sectors, in 9 green entrepreneurship sectors. Then there's 54 billion dollars US dollars in waste management and circular economy sector. We also saw there's $33 billion that are in a sustainable agriculture and aquaculture. As you can see, there's a lot of money. $22 billion in waste management and about $1 billion US dollars in sustainable transportation sector. This is what is already being funded. This is what we found. How is that spread looking? In the sectors that we saw the most traction was sustainable agriculture and aquaculture, where we saw 33 billion deployed between the year 2022 and 2030 as a possibility to happen. And then the other opportunity was in renewable energy. This sector stand out because they have the most sizable opportunity processes. As we all know, we live in Nairobi. This is an issue, but it's an opportunity for entrepreneurship to be able to put business models at work. Is success happening even amidst this state where there's a lot of money but not really an organization of that subsector? Yes, we were able to see these 5 organizations: Safi Organics, Acacia Innovations, Kiri, Waste Electrical Equipment Center, and Kwangu Wako. Some are dealing in organic manure, fertilizer. Others are dealing in waste management. But what are they doing right about these organizations that is making them really succeed in these areas? Is because they've been able to have diverse funding sources, and not just relying on granting or debt, but also being able to have business models that are making them sustainable from whatever products and services that they're offering. They're able to have meaningful technical support, the support that they have organized around them, investing in networking, knowing that they need partnerships to be able to move forward, and that these are not just networking, but there must be strategic partnerships within financing or non-financial support. The other report that we were able to accumulate in was a snapshot of the ecosystem, and we're looking at who is receiving money. It was reported that nearly 90% of entrepreneurship support organizations have the main challenge that they see for green entrepreneurs is low investor confidence. in and familiarity with green business models. Like we've just mentioned before we started, that there's an issue with business models that have not been tested, that we are seeing new business models in this area, and that creates low investor confidence. We have limited climate financing in itself. What does that bucket look like? And in the second panel, we'll be talking more about that. Predominantly, we have more international funding sources. It's not that it's a really bad thing, but the issue is, does it land with the market need? Does it land with what is needed where we are at? Limited investor-ready business models as well. And this is where the entrepreneurship support ecosystem comes in to ensure that we are able to give that support to be able to reinvent and really empower these business models to be ready for financing. Now, with that report, we were able to see that there's a heavy reliance on international players. About 50% of the entrepreneurship support organizations are headquartered outside of the country, with around 70% of investors be also internationally based. So the entrepreneurship ecosystem is coming together to say, this is a problem that we have, then how do we come together to be able to create more ESOs here and just support them? And also investors are locally aligned or locally situated. The support that was available for green entrepreneurs in terms of financial support was about 34% in grants, and the common type is a common type of fundraising, followed by debt at 22% and equity at 21%. The most common ticket size was between 0 to 25,000 US dollars. That's not a lot, right? But that's what is a common market. But I think that's where we come to de-risk and give that fast so that we have follow-on financing. And then over 50% of financial support is directly available to entrepreneurs and not entrepreneurship support organizations. Therefore, the need to create for financing for ESOs that provide that support framework for these innovators. Apart from financial support, the non-financial support that was seen was at 94%, 166 out of 176 of the respondents that we got had a lot of non-financial support providers, while financial support stood at 52%. So generally, non-financial support seems more, which really translates with what we've seen in the market, that we have more ESOs organized to support the entrepreneurs and the innovators. How about the impact landscape, like we've talked about? What is the alignment to SDGs? We saw that about 25% of organizations, programs, or activities are explicitly and intentionally aligned to at least one SDG, which is a good thing. Breaking it down, majority of the climate-aligned businesses at 61% are aligned to SDG 13 climate action. The ecosystem, therefore, would benefit from being more sharing on the information that they have, doing more joint learning opportunities on best practices on impact measurement to continue this further and to break down that impact sustainability that we've talked about this morning. So what recommendations did we see that we need to put out? Access to finance is a pervasive challenge, and the solutions require multiple stakeholders. It is not a problem for one person to create a solution, but for the whole ecosystem support system to come together. Public and private collaboration is necessary in shaping governmental action to better address the role of green businesses. And this is why we're here together today, to be able to not only, start, but continue these public-private collaborations that will help in how we scale our innovations. And lastly, the ecosystem would benefit from improved information sharing, like we said, and therefore more networking opportunities. And those are the reactions and what we got from there. So from there, I would like to transition us into the panels to bring from not just the national position, but where are we at Nairobi and how can we be able to understand the sustainability business. So I'll call upon our moderator for this panel, who is Gladys, to come up to the stage. Please, a round of applause for her as she comes up. And this panel has a couple of people on it. I would like to welcome Rachel Wanyuike, who is the Managing Director for Solidaridad Network and also a member of the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs and sits actually on the steering committee. A round of applause for her as she comes up. We also have Marcy Naliu, Nasi Mario, I hope I say that right, the head of technology at ISIPE, if he's here. We have Ian Lorenzen, who is executive director and partner at Growth Africa. A round of applause for him. We have Victor Ndege, who is the CEO of Kenya Climate Ventures. As he comes up, kindly a round of applause for him.
Can I sit or I have to stand here? It's better if I sit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for making time to join us on this session. And I'm very honored to have great panelists here with us today. So today we'll be speaking about green innovations, and one would like to ask, what is green innovations? Even before we kick off, to reintroduce myself, my name is Gladys Kivati. I lead a team at Sustainable Business Consulting. We are a boutique consulting firm that specializes in sustainability and ESG matters, and this topic is really core to our work. And just to kick us off, how do we define green innovations? And of course, if you Google what green innovation is, you're going to come up with a long list of definitions and also synonyms that represent what green innovation is. But I'm going to try to define what it is. So green innovation refers to the type of innovations that that involve production or rather products or services that are built rather that have less impact on the environment, and they're actually trying to promote resource efficiency. So for a business, you'd be looking at how do you design your processes, how do you build your products, or even ensure that your services have less environmental harm, but also they're trying to promote resource efficiency. And in our panelists today, I'm going to ask each one of us to introduce ourselves and to just speak about how are we promoting green innovations, or how is our work actually trying to ensure that the businesses or the stakeholders we engage are promoting green innovation. So I'm going to start over with you, Victor.
Well, thanks, Gladys. And my name is Victor Ndiege. I'm the CEO of Kenya Climate Ventures. We are a climate impact investor based here in Nairobi, currently investing in Kenya only, but also looking at the region in the next 2 or 3 years. Primarily, we provide investments, and it's a package of capital and business growth support. A clear item and criteria is that it has to be a providing climate smart solution. And the climate smart solution should be creating positive impact to the markets, to the environment, and improving livelihoods. So in the definition of trying to contribute to climate resilience, green is actually about long-lasting impact for us. And green is about ethical investing. And green for us is about providing solutions that are creating resilience to climate change.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Ian, over to you.
Yeah, so my name is Ian. I'm an executive director and partner at Growth Africa, which is a Pan-African accelerator and entrepreneur support organization. And I'd say, and I think you kind of hit the nail right on in terms of probably at times separating a little bit between the innovators and the entrepreneurs, and they're not always the same. I think we have a little bit of a sense sometimes to say that that's the same. So I think the way I say is that we're working both with entrepreneurs that are thinking or are interested in, would like to put in green practices in their businesses, so greening their businesses. And then we're lucky also to have a number of innovators as well in our cohorts of entrepreneurs. And I think ideally often we need to build more of a bridge between the innovators, those who actually have the green solutions, and the entrepreneurs who actually want to apply the green solutions, so that we don't end up only focusing on the innovators, when we also know that a lot of, especially young, small business struggling to implement the same green solutions that really will bring them on the pathway as well to contributing more sustainably to the way that we run. And I think often the small business could serve as a great inspiration for some of the bigger businesses, because they actually have, with the right financing, an opportunity to bring in some practices that the big boys really should take a notice on. So, yeah.
Morning, everybody. So my name is Rachel Wanyoike, and I'm the Managing Director for Solidaridad in East and Central Africa. So when we think about sort of green innovation or greening, we're looking at it at possibly two different lenses. So the first lens being the smallholder farmers and producers and miners that we work with, that are looking at how they can actually do the things that they do, the work that they do, but in balance with nature. So whether it's integrating environmentally friendly practices, climate smart agriculture, it's how you embed that as part of your business as usual. And the other end of it as well, we work very similar to Ian with entrepreneurs and businesses within the market space who are thinking about how they can actually also be greening their own businesses. So whether it's developing specific products or solutions that can be accessed by smallholder farmers or producers, or whether it's actually providing services within the market that are greening specific processes. So it's a bit of an end-to-end for the Solidaridad team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. And I'm just looking to ask you just to expound on that, because you've talked about, working with different stakeholders around, especially smallholder farmers. And what we'd really like to find out is, how do you bring all these stakeholders together in trying to promote climate resilient strategies? So as you've said, you work from end to end with different stakeholders. So how do you ensure that the green innovations that are being either proposed or that are supporting these smallholder farmers are really trying to promote climate resilience? And at the end of the day, how do you ensure that the products that they're producing or, they're relevant for the market and they're really, promoting climate resilient strategies in their production?
So the approach that we actually currently use, thanks Gladys for that, really tends to focus on how you can actually bring all the stakeholders to the table. So whether it's through multi-stakeholder engagements or just clear interactions where you are preparing the farmers and producers to actually interact with market players. So in those kinds of situations, we are really working on the market dynamics, the whole demand and supply process. Because if the market demands sustainable products, if the market demands some of these green products, then you're at least able to then be able to supply, either at a premium or at the very least, in balance with nature. So the way that we tend to operate within this space is on the farmer side, really looking at how we can integrate climate smart practices in the work that they do, whether it's integrating things like soil fertility management, watershed management, more climate resilient crops, developing more climate resilient seeds or seedlings. So at the very least, when the market now demands the sustainable products, the farmers and producers are able to generate them. And then on the market side of it is actually seeing how you can show that value addition of actually going green, and not in a sort of passive approach to it, but actually how you integrate it in your entire business as usual. Also demanding the people who you're sourcing from to follow similar practices. Obviously, that can be linked to sort of standards or certification or the different pools of the market. But at least from the private sector business side of it, it's ensuring that the products that you are developing or packaging or processing at the end of the day meet specific standards that are moving towards a green approach. We advocate for that at a local and a regional level, but obviously now with the global implications around things like the EU deforestation regulations and other various global structures that are actually more pushing towards that traceability and transparency of your products, greening is going to be essential, and especially within the agriculture sector. So the way we look at it is really a multi-stakeholder approach that really kind of brings everyone together to try and figure out how you can tackle common challenges, but also find solutions that work for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel, for that. And Ian, just to you mentioned really an interesting point that there's a big difference between innovators and entrepreneurs. So I think a question to you based on what you do at Growth Africa, what do you see the role of innovation in trying to really drive economic growth for entrepreneurs? And is there a way for us to bridge, innovators and entrepreneurs? How can we really bridge that gap, or how can we really manage that to ensure that you're really trying to promote sustainable green innovations that make money and can actually have a positive economic impact?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is often you think in this information age, we shouldn't be lacking information, but I think there still is a clear need often to be able to do simple forums where people actually meet and get to see what are potentially some of the practical applications that could be used in my business, and which is out there and which are there available locally that you don't need to look to the West for, that we actually have here, and very often are way more applicable solutions that we sometimes see out in a way more high-tech world. And I think we've seen that on a number of occasions where entrepreneurs here would actually rather seek out an innovation or invention out of South Africa or Ghana than they would try and seek it necessarily from the West. Both because of a price point, but also often because it's just technically at a point that is more applicable. They know the spare parts, repairs, other things are available locally. So I think it gives us a chance to actually say we need local solutions. I know it sounds like a catchphrase that has been used too much, but I think we need continue inventing and having people that find local solutions that are applicable to what we have here, both in context of price, technology, and other ways. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ian, for that. And I know KCV, you refer yourself as a local impact investor. So hearing from Ian, his proposed local solutions. So maybe you can speak about what you really do to really promote green innovations. And here we're looking at it. I think what has been mentioned earlier by Grace in the presentation was, looking for local investment instruments, as well as we see the ticket size. I think the ticket size was between $0 to $25,000, which is a very small ticket size to actually scale such type of innovation. So maybe you can just walk us through how you do it at KCV and what opportunities and challenges you've come across. And you can even give us example of some of the SMEs you've supported.
Thanks, Gladys. It's three questions in one, but we'll see. So I want to build from what Ian has already said, that innovation and entrepreneurship, they are related, but I think the entrepreneurship should be able to drive the kind of innovative ideas that come through in the ecosystem. And the whole idea is that innovation should contribute to a large extent improvement in market systems. And in the market, there are entrepreneurs, there are policy and other influencers, there are investors. And so the role of KCV is an investor role, and an investor role in climate investment. And so the bottom line, as I mentioned earlier, is that we really focus on who the entrepreneur is. And who the entrepreneur is the positioning, not the individual. It's the positioning, it's the individual, and it's also the product that the individual is trying to promote in a manner that fits within a market. So that's the broad definition. And in that, we are very specific about the solution, which is that package. And that solution should be able to drive climate resilience. Because as we know now, livelihoods is about climate. Markets is affected by climate change. Food security is affected by climate change. Trade is affected by climate change. And so the sustainability of entrepreneurship is actually anchored around the extent to which whatever we do can be climate resilient. So what does KCV do? We have tailored our investment in form of a package. So it's both capital and business growth support. Capital, realizing the fact that businesses have to spend to be able to grow and to be able to service the market. The only difference probably between KCV and a bank somewhere is that our capital is a lot more concessional. And when I say concessional, it is market reflective. So it's not about giving free money to do business. It's about tailoring the capital in a manner that recognizes that entrepreneurs are at different levels of doing business, and that they are delivering different products and services, and that they are working within different value chains, and so they need very tailored and appropriate capital to do so. So it's not one shoe fits all. Business growth support, because at their early stage, which is our largest focus, right now 80% of our portfolio of 22 investments is actually early stage. What it means is that we are onboarding businesses and enterprises which have weak managerial systems. We are onboarding businesses that still have to improve their governance. We are onboarding businesses which still have to access a lot of market information to be able to make the correct decisions that support their businesses. And so there is need to support them in a manner that helps and supports holistic growth, in addition to what other business development service providers do. So we start it off to support their technical growth, but then also partner with ESOs to be able to now grow it further, because it's not within the KCV speciality to dwell more on business growth support. So we only provide what can kickstart the entrepreneurs and then link them to the rest of the ecosystem to do so. We have a range of instruments that are applied differently depending on which value chain, depending on which markets, depending on the growth of the business. And what I would want to say generally is that patient capital is what is required. So the term patient can be interpreted as maybe a longer tenure. So our capital KCV investment is up to around 7 years. That's a very long time. Right now we are doing an average of 5 years, and it's extending. So we think 7 years is a good time for entrepreneurs to really demonstrate market traction. Patient capital in the context of affordability, and affordability has to be in the context of market reflection. So usually it's a digit or two below the market rate, and the market rate is a standard for commercial lenders and the banks. Just I think 1 or 2 days ago, the central bank has maintained the reference rate at around 10.5. So what it means is that we are going to continue seeing, capital and lending rates of maybe 17, 18, 19% at the commercial stage. That is not concessional enough for an early stage enterprise to thrive. So that's where KCV has to bridge. As you are aware, most early stage enterprises actually do not have an opportunity to fit into the criteria of conventional lending. And so the de-risking aspect of our capital is what is important for these businesses to be able to surface and gain market traction. The last one you have asked me about, what success, one or two.
Yep.
And so I just want to mention one of them. And so in 2017, we onboarded an enterprise that was led by 2 women who just, had their contracts ending in whichever place they were getting employed. And they scoped the market and realized that they could do something around macadamia aggregation and processing. And the first investment actually came from an accelerator, which is a sister company, Kenya Climate Innovation Center. But then KCV now went on to do the follow-on financing, which was now a lot more commercial with a lot of business growth support. In short, that enterprise managed to do three things which have managed, that have supported their sustainability in the market. One is that they have been able to sustain up to around 163 job opportunities in the market. So that's important for us because of impact. Two, they have been able to manage and they have been able to expand their market from local market to export market. So right now they're exporting macadamia to the US, to the EU. And if you count to 5 of the major macadamia export companies in Kenya, they are falling possibly in position 2 or 3. That is very important because it's an impact-oriented business that has been de-risked over the last 4.5, 5 years and is able to now compete and edge out competitors in the market. A third item that has been very useful is that they have been able to set up their own processing facility from capital that has been obtained from a wide range of investors, now including them having an opportunity to go to the banks and negotiate for higher ticket sizes. So our ticket sizes are between 50,000 USD to $1 million, depending on which stage of the business applies and what we are interested in investing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking those questions. And Ian, I know you also, this is also a space that I think Growth Africa is really passionate about. And one of the things that we come about is scalability. You know, green innovations, the business case is not there for financials, is not there for, for most accelerator programs around, trying to bring in the right support technically, but also business-wise. So what are some of the challenges and also opportunities you've come across in scaling green innovations? And you can even share a case study as well, just for us to learn from you.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's perhaps not to overemphasize that money is always the problem, and maybe it's not always the main problem, but it's the easy one because it's the one that is outside our perceived control at least. So I think that's one bit. And also there's massive opportunities. I think often what we see is that the entrepreneurs tend to be very good at the core of their business. So if it's a green innovation, they tend to be relatively strong at actually the innovation side, and the bit that we need to help them on is the business bit. The bit where how can we turn this into a better business, into a scalable business, one where we better understand what is the market, what does the price point look like, what is the customers, what are potentially the pivots or the further innovations, refinements that we can bring to that. And in terms of areas that we can address, I think there is, and let's maybe not be shy about that as well, there are sectors, and Andy also sharing that, like energy, which tends to be more heavy on investment. And that means you have a certain type of players. I think we have a lot in the waste space that seem to be having a lot more local players and a lot more local innovation. So whether that's, as a case, now that you're asking for that, it could be businesses that are breeding black soldier flies as a protein input to, for example, animal feed, and which are feeding off, or could be feeding off, food waste coming from restaurants or from manufacturers that has this as a waste product. I think we have a lot of areas where there's a perceived traditional waste stream from one business that can serve as an input to another business, which are relatively easy to get moving on this. You can say plastics, traditionally for many businesses, was something they would get. For big manufacturers, they would have a lot of plastic waste because they were getting input in and they were doing things with that. And it was a waste stream that way around that where other businesses could tap into. So I think that's exciting. I think one of the other buzzwords we see is digitalization. I think digitalization will allow us and allow some of our entrepreneurs to do a different way of aggregating and being able to get to some of that input that wasn't financially feasible in the past. And then I think there's also solutions that where we can apply things that might not be entirely new, but where the technology is known, but it needs to be combined in a new way. So we've seen one of the businesses in the past that excited me a lot was a wastewater from agribusiness and how that could be turned into biogas and in a process flow also be cleaned, which is something that speaks to water management that we haven't really dealt with yet. So there's plenty, and I think one of the things when people say that we sometimes missing talent, I think one thing we have is abundance of talent. It is the ability for us to help and support that talent will be groomed, grown, supported to become that superstar. I think that way the sport analogy is pretty simple, and the same way here. Whether it's investments, or whether it's the TA, whether it's the market access and connections, all of that plays in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like looking at the sectors that have really taken prominence, when it comes to green innovations. We're seeing a lot of investments now in renewable energy. Now we see a lot of investments in electric kind of related innovations, and yeah, so we're really looking forward to see how many innovations can actually come out from this sector. So another thing that Victor mentioned, and this is Rachel to you, he talked about the systemic issues, yeah, that really are affecting or that are glaring for the ecosystem. And based on your work, and here I just want us to get more practical, based on the work you do at Solidaridad, looking at how, and you can give us an example of a project or an initiative undertaken, what have been some of the ways you've dealt with some of these systemic challenges that are really trying to promote green innovations? And here you can focus on the smallholder or the local, the local beneficiaries. How do you bridge the gap between green innovation and access? Because as Ian has mentioned, we have innovators who sit, they're very technically fit, but how do this innovation actually reach to those that need it? And what has Solidaridad done in trying to deal with these systemic issues? And how do you promote access of these innovations to the stakeholders you work with locally?
Thanks, Gladys, for the question. So if I could figure out how to bridge that gap, I think I'd put myself out of a job. But for all intents and purposes, if I just piggyback on some of the things that my colleagues on stage have said, just reiterating what Victor is saying, definitely climate change and the impacts of climate change are affecting us in various ways, from food security, from lack of actual supply of raw materials even in the market, which then has knock-on effects around a country needing to import more or a country suffering. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of different frameworks and infrastructures that are greatly affected just by the impacts of climate change. And when we look at the work that we do in Solidaridad as a not-for-profit, really focusing around how you can look at farming as a business. So I know everyone who came to this particular session is probably thinking about small grain businesses, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. But for us at Solidaridad, we're really focusing on how farming can be a business. How can you move away from general subsistence farming to actually taking into account some of the investments that you need to make, including in some of these innovations around water management, around soil management, around waste management, to be able to deliver on the thing that you're doing. So when we're looking at now farming as a business, you also have to think about what are the incentives for farmers and producers to want to participate. Usually I think the knock-on effect or the quick adage is increase your productivity, it'll increase your incomes. Well, not necessarily. With market dynamics, that might not be the case. Some people say, get the certification, get the standards, then you'll be able to charge a premium. Not necessarily. Because at the end of the day, the market determines what they would want to pay for it. So for Solidaridad, what we look at it as integrating sustainability, looking at climate innovation, and just including it as your business as usual. So don't look at this as a quick fix. Don't look at this as the quickest way for you to make money, but it could be. It could be a pathway to it. So as you're improving your practices, as you're integrating climate smart practices into the work, technologies, new innovations, use of data, trying to figure out how to improve your business, you're able to now leverage that as you go along and as you enter into the market. So if I can think about maybe a project that we're running in both Kenya and Uganda, that's funded by the Dutch National Postcode Lottery, is really looking at how we can link coffee farmers at the moment with activities that they're already doing, which is meaning planting shade trees for their coffee, using that level of agroforestry to potentially carbon trade, use it for carbon trading. So could they actually plant trees, enter into the carbon market, and get carbon finance? So right now we're actually running the project in Uganda and Kenya, and so far we're actually seeing uptake even within our farmers. And not that this is going to be the thing that lifts them out of poverty, but this is also added incentive to actually participate in sort of climate smart practices, because at the end of the day, they're seeing that whatever rewards they might be able to get from carbon and the carbon financing that's paid directly to them is an adage on top of the incomes that they gain from their farming. So I think for Solidaridad, the way that we look at it is almost like the sustainability and the approach towards green or climate innovation is not a nice to have, it's an essential. You know, it's a business as usual model that you need to integrate in the work you do.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you for sharing those examples. So we are out of time, but I'll just give everybody like 2 seconds to just do a call to action. How do we actually promote green climate innovations in the ecosystem to promote entrepreneurship, economic growth, but also environmental conservation? We can start with you, Victor. 1 second.
All right. Yeah, it's already gone. Okay, but I think the most important aspect is capacity building. Capacity building for proper uptake of capital and capacity building for improved systems. To me, that is the most important factor that can help us really grow our businesses towards, a green position. I want to make a quick comment that concessional to entrepreneurs, concessional does not mean non-payment. It does not mean default. It does not mean unaccountable. What it means, it's soft enough, flexible enough to make you grow.
Ecosystem. So I think pathway is that we so often assume that we know each other. And that becomes something I would keep on repeating. And yet if we checked out in the room, we still also realize that a lot of us ought to know each other and we don't. So it's this intangible magic resource that is connection and linkages, networks, and which is really part of what we need to play at in terms of supporting entrepreneurs, that every day they're focusing getting that business to grow and to work, as rightfully said, to get the processes, to get all of that working. It is our role to help and support and connecting them with the right people that can be part of that equation, and not assume that because we know of each other, that we know each other. So spend enough time. Also, we know we live in a trust economy where we need to be able to trust each other, otherwise the rest is just blur. It's just a LinkedIn connection, but it's not something deeper than that. So definitely linkages, connections, network, to build and be true about that ecosystem. We always assume and talk about as if it's there magically, but it takes work and it takes time.
I think coming from the sort of agriculture sector, I think everybody is going to expect me to say about access and finance and all of those things, which is also really great. Definitely access, finance, capacity building, and the ecosystem is essential. But I think for me, what I would want to leave as my last takeaway would be actual mutual accountability. There is an expectation also from a lot of our producing sectors, like the agriculture sector, that you need to get the right certification, you need to follow specific standards, you need to do all of these things to be able to develop a sustainable product for the market. But a lot of the time we're realizing that the market either is not willing to pay for all of those adages, or they don't want it, they want something cheaper. So I think the one thing I'd leave is mutual accountability. It's both demand and supply. Your producers are going to be able to design, develop, to grow, to do the things that they need to do using climate smart practices, using all this innovation and technology. But the one thing to ask yourself as a consumer is, are you actually asking for it? Are you demanding it? Are you demanding sustainability in the products that you have? So I think for me, I would say it's mutual accountability. It's not just one-sided. It's just not the entrepreneurs and the businesses that have to do it, but it's also the consumers out there who need to be ready to consume and to pay for some of the things that actually come out of this process.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for our panelists. And I think my call to action, just 1 second, is this awareness. Get to know of the green innovations that are out there. Get in touch with the green innovators that are out there. We'll be doing something around circular economy. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, please get in touch with me. Just also for you to be aware of the circular economy technologies that are out there, how you can tap in. But all in all, please let's be aware of the green innovations that are there. And a round of applause again to our panelists as we end.
A round of applause again. Thank you so much, our panelists. I'll just open it up to 2 comments or questions, if there's any.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pauline. My question is on the bridge, the intersection between green innovation and technology. Like, is it really going to be sustainable in the future, and how are you going to integrate those systems and ensure that there's no further harm to the environment in future? Yeah. To any of the panelists can answer the question, or all.
Oh, can we take more than 1 minute? Yeah. Oh, any other question? I think that's it.
Well, I want to give it a try. It would have been easier to answer if some finance was involved, but now this is what my take is, that there are efficient ways of delivering businesses, and it is more efficient if it does not harm the environment and livelihoods. So in a sense, technologies that are more supportive of sustainable livelihoods, that are more supportive of sustainable costs, that are more supportive of sustainable relationships within a market system, will always find their way into entrepreneurship, markets, and will create value. What is important is that the support that we provide to be able to accelerate the adoption and use of those technologies must emphasize sustainability, must emphasize do no harm, must emphasize resilience, and more so climate resilience. If, for example, the business support service providers, investors, focus on that kind of narrative, it's very easy to weed out technologies and practices that would eventually create negative effects on our environment. So it is how we promote it, it is how we support it, and it is how it is relevant to our business. If it creates value, if it creates efficiency from a cost, delivery, and impact perspective. That's what I would say to it. So from almost, mutually, and building on what Rachel has said, these aspects are mutually supportive. And so it is no longer nice to do or to say that we are environmentally conscious, but it has to be embedded in the way you do business, and it has to be seen in your products and services. And if it creates value, then the customers and the clients will be able to pay for it from that start point. A lot of sensitization still has to be done for customers to appreciate that environmental consciousness, sustainability, climate resilience creates value, and it creates more sustainable value, even though they have to pay a little more for it at the initial stages. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this is a difference, but kind of a different part of your question. But I think there's increasing focus on that technology is not always for good. And I think we have had this assumption in the past that technology was always serving us. I think, though, that so far still we are in charge. That might flip, and that may be that discussion going forward. But to the extent where we still are in control, I think we still are the ones making the choices and making informed decisions. So I think also exactly having the conversations. There is more data. I think data was also mentioned. But definitely data will play a big piece in terms of making these right choices, making the informed decisions that we need on what technologies and what technologies to develop, what technologies to deploy, and also how do we adapt the technologies in the right way that they serve our communities and our people rather than just blindly do, which is, we've done that in the past for sure. And that still showcases of that. But I think there's a lot more information out, there's a lot more forums, there's a lot more conversation that will direct us towards making the right choices in terms of technology.
And maybe just to piggyback is also, when you're asking what the bridge between the technologies and the sort of green innovation and climate innovation could be, it's exactly what both Victor and Ian have said. It's a lot of the knowledge and the skills transfer that serves as that bridge. Because for all intents purposes, innovation doesn't necessarily always mean technology. It could be new business models. It could be lots of different things. So I think the bridge between creating that link between green innovation and actual technologies is obviously looking for the right technologies, but also empowering yourself with enough information to know that they're the right technologies. So having that skills, knowledge transfer in between is essential as well.
A round of applause for our panel as they step down the stage. Thank you very much. We appreciate you all. We are very late. I think for me, I would also add that I think we are in a country where we are really blessed that we have a lot of penetration of the internet. There's a certain time where just the availability of internet was the innovation, right? But now it's how do we use that internet? How do we use technology to actually provide solutions for our problems in our country? And also how do we create efficiencies for our businesses? So an innovation will scale into an enterprise, but technology will be an enabler of that process, and that creates a bridge. It's not the technology too, it's that enabling environment that takes us there. So thank you very much. We have had amazing, amazing nuggets from that panel. Consension, I think Victor said, consension, was it the word? Is it the word consension? It's not refusal, it is patience. It is not refusal, it is patience. And it is very important that as innovators, as young entrepreneurs, we understand that, the patience that we need to, and have the support that we need with the amazing ideas that we have to solve these problems. We've talked about transport, we've talked about waste management, we've talked about how do we link agriculture and tech and climate action. But that support for us to create those brilliant ideas into sustainable businesses is really what we want. Another round of applause. I think that was an amazing, amazing panel. I can see notebooks out. I can see you guys writing. And as we cue the slides once again, Growth Africa is running a program that is going to be coming up. And when it's up there, kindly go up to the link and look at that to see what kind of support you can get from an ESO. Now, I want us to transition to the next panel, which is the Climate Finance panel. This panel is being, there it is, with the support of IKEA Foundation. EIT, Climate, KIC, and Growth Africa are creating a self-innovation cluster in Nairobi to generate solutions for waste management through circular economies. So that's the link. Maureen, you can raise your hand up. This beautiful lady walking, she'll be able to give you the link, the hookup to that, and you're welcome to join that and explore those opportunities for entrepreneurs. Now, the next panel, I would like to welcome our moderator, who is Sarah from GZ. She comes up to the stage. Karibu sana, a round of applause for her. You know, I need the slides to call the others. And Sarah can do that for me. But thank you very much. I believe we'll be able to go forward just fine. Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. These jokes keep writing themselves. I am coming to moderate a climate panel with pieces of paper, so start judging me now. Okay, I will be moderating this session. My name is Sarah McKenna, like introduced. I work for GIZ as a climate investment advisor. I have been in this sector for about 10 years, and I have been living in the reality of climate change for over 30 years. And my panel is very interesting, and I'm going to strategically start with Murabula, because maybe he doesn't know this. I started my journey deeply into climate change at KCAC. He's currently the CEO of KCAC and a member of the World Intellectual Property WIPO Green Core Committee, and supporting a lot of global efforts on eco-friendly technologies, providers and seekers. Murabula has over 20 years of experience in this sector, and so we're going to be hearing a lot from him, and we have very little time to learn from the wealth of knowledge that he has. Next, I will be calling up Alan, who is currently a consultant with UNEP. And Alan, in his capacity, has knowledge spanning a number of areas in green jobs financing, with environmental focus and establishment of global partnerships aimed at ensuring equitable transition. He's spearheading collaborative initiatives in designing, coordinating, and executing Green Jobs for Youth Pact on both regional and global platforms. Welcome, Alan. Then the next person will be, I really want to get this right. Vladimir Dagin from E3 Capital, that's a partner. Is he here? I am not sure he's here yet. Yeah. Maureen tells me he's not here yet, so I think I will invite the next panelist. That's Saran Jao from Sustainability. That's the Sustainability and Impact Business Manager from Vince Plastics. I think this will be our entrepreneur of the day to give us that perspective from the entrepreneur side. And she has worked for the WE Center as a business development officer. She also has expertise and made notable contribution in management policies extent across Kenya and East Africa. And she's also underscored by membership of Kenya National E-Waste Steering Committee and her involvement in the formulation of the Secretary of EE Pro. I think that will be it. Is Ibrahim here? Okay. Our other panelists, last but not least, from the Nairobi County, that's Ibrahim Otieno, and we will be hearing from, is he here yet? Okay, I'm also told Nairobi County is not here yet. So I'll be having 3 panelists today morning. You'll allow me to first stand as I first introduce a few things on green financing and the perspective that I currently have on green financing. The panel that went ahead of us did a very good background to explain to us and tell us what does it mean to be an actor in this sector. And we are here to talk about the financing. And I was very happy to hear Victor talk about every innovator. And I think also Ian mentioned it. Having worked in that sector, every business you talk to comes to you and says, you know, it's money that is a problem. And I can tell you half of them as a business coach and as someone who's worked in the sector, I'm able to very quickly tell them, money is not your problem. There's enough money for everyone here, because the investors out here are always looking for us and asking, do you have pipeline? And the innovators are here saying that we don't have money, we are looking for capital. So there is clearly a gap. And then there is this new dimension and new area that we are looking at, that is green financing, that has become the talk of town. And UNEP has looked at green financing as financial flows from different sectors: banking, microcredit institutions, insurance agencies, investment companies, both public, private, and the non-governmental organizations. And the word here is sustainable development. So we are looking at financing that is coming that is focusing on sustainable development priorities. So you're not only telling us what is the return on investment, but you're also looking at what is the social and environmental return that we are getting from this. And there are different aspects and things that I want us to think about as I go to my panel. We are very far away from what the Paris Agreement was predicted and looked at as the financing that we should receive as Africa, or should be going into climate financing. Right now, a very quick search on Google gave me that we are at about annually 12%, meaning it will take us 8 times longer to get where the Paris Agreement thought we would be. And this financing, 77% of it is coming from public sources. I don't want to start talking about the private sector here, so we can just imagine how that is going. Then we have the private sector with about 23%. And this was mentioned by the first panel. It's just the cliche sectors that are receiving the funding: renewable energy, agriculture, and now we have transport. Nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't mean that is where we stop. There's so much more to green financing that I believe we'll be talking about. And finally, Kenya has made a lot of progress in terms of green financing and big things that we've been able to do. The green bonds that have been floated, the impact of that is still up for debate, but hey, we've made an impact in terms of that. And looking at things like the Lake Turkana Wind Power Project bond that was also floated. The banks are also catching up, with the Standard Chartered Bank being the first one that floated a green bond in 2020. And housing finance in 2019 among also the first people. So we are looking at quite a number of things that have been done in terms of making progress in green financing. But I come back now and ask about the innovators and think about the innovators that we work with, who are not looking at floating a bond and are not going to benefit largely from what is happening in what Econ has done, what housing finance has done, but what are the opportunities does this small business have? What opportunity does the farmer that we are supporting have in benefiting from green financing and even understanding it? Because when you look at the challenges that green financing is, the first thing is definition. We do not even understand as Africa what green financing is, because one, the report clearly stated, we are not the source of the financing. So whoever is bringing the financing defines as green financing is what we take. So we don't have any definition of green financing where we can say, oh, okay, this is what we think is green financing. If Europe changes today the definition of green financing, then we have to follow, because they are funding. If any other funder, I'm using that as an example, changes, then that is what we follow. But what is green financing in our own context? And what are the challenges we are facing as a continent and now as a country to be able to look at the opportunities that we have currently and that are coming to the future to benefit the startups and to have a ripple effect to finally have what we are calling, we keep talking about sustainable development. So I will go to my panel and I'll be asking them to, just in your own words, what would you define, what do you think green financing is? And I'll start with Murabula, Joseph Murabula.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, let me say there are around the whole continuum of sustainable financing, green financing, and climate financing. There are those three words that then are used interchangeably sometimes, but they mean different things. The sustainable finance, which is more or less like the broader one. Then there's green finance, and then there's climate finance also. So in my own definition of green finance is basically around financial flows that support people or enterprises to promote positive climate outcomes. Positive environmental outcomes, not climate outcomes. And the measure of that is usually around what we call carbon intensity. That is just how much carbon are you producing, or how much pollution are you producing to the environment to produce an additional unit of production or of income. Like every sort of finance, it has various components. So you have products, and at this we probably speak about things like green loans, things like green bonds, which Sarah has spoken about, green mortgages, green credit cards, or even green equity, as it is. It has institutions. But more and more we are seeing banks that position themselves as green banks. They only support projects or businesses that have positive environmental outcomes. We have green funds, and those are many around the world. Things like the Green Climate Fund, things like the Global Environmental Facility, things like the Adaptation Fund. All those are institutions that sort of look at supporting projects or programs with positive environment outcomes. Kenya Climate Ventures is a very good example in Kenya. And then you have things around finance that supports regulations to do with positive environment impacts. The best example we have in Kenya is, for instance, the financing of feed-in tariffs, for instance, which basically try to price energy that we get into the national grid. So in a nutshell, basically finance that supports positive environment outcomes, finance that supports low carbon development pathways, that would be called green finance. Thank you.
Thank you. I totally agree with what he says. For me, my definition of green finance is, or define them as financial flows that are channeled towards businesses that are geared towards climate-friendly models. And a climate-friendly model is a business model that has either one of these components. Number one is minimizing waste and pollution, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, improving raw material and energy efficiency, or preserving or restoring the environment, and also a business that is geared or rather has a model that is working towards climate adaptation to the effects of climate change. So that for me is what I would define as green financing. So there are very many components of green financing, and there are so many businesses that have different models that are channeled towards one component or the other, and all that can be termed as green financing. Yeah.
Is there anything left for me to add? They've said everything. But I'll just add to that component of green financing as adapting to the market as they are, because the term green financing as it sits on books, I call it the Adam Smith way. We've not gotten to Wanjiko, Kiprono, kind of definition of what green financing is, because the terms and conditions of green financing are, to me, as it is, they are always constant. They've yet to adapt to who we are, what we are doing. Yes.
I think we've gotten quite a broad and expanded definition of what green financing is. And I would want to go into the startup ecosystem. First, to point out, when I was looking at the report that was presented from Growth Africa, the first thing that really stood out for me was, and no offense to any innovator, that the same names keep on going round in terms of access to finance and opportunities for financing within the ecosystem. So I'm looking at a time where we will start seeing more opportunities and more businesses being able to tap into this. And I'll start with you, Sarah, and ask you, what do you think are current opportunities for startups in terms of green financing? And how, as a startup, have you been able to tap into that? Or what are the challenges? Have you not been able to tap into it?
First, Vince Plastics is, it's not a startup, but we are a startup in when it comes to the circular economy process of plastic recycling. We are among the only Kenyan plastic recycling company that actually deals with almost all plastic products and give them a whole circular economy model. The opportunities are there. Immense. One challenge is what I mentioned, is adapting to the business model of how, I'll give a system of how waste management is, for instance. And waste management is not black soldier fly. It's not organic. That is very easy. When we come to the other waste streams, it's very different because plastic, it's a cash business. You give me your plastics, I give you money. And it's a market that fluctuates. So I can never give you a price for a kilo of PET. I'll tell you today is 20 shillings, tomorrow might be 18 shillings. So when the ESOs come to me and ask me for my books, I'm a $2 million company when it comes to sales. But when you do P&L, I'm $500,000. Then you disqualify me for the financing bit of it. So that is the main challenge. The opportunities are there, but do not encompass to the reality for how business is. You get your plastics from the dump sites, they're extremely dirty. The cleaning process, the OPEX itself, the CAPEX itself. So they have this model in their heads from Europe that should apply to most of the African countries, and it cannot work.
Okay, I totally agree with her. You asked about the opportunities, and let me say, as UNEP, we are working, currently I'm working on a project called the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. Allow me to explain what it is. The Green Jobs for Youth Pact is a legacy initiative of the Stockholm Plus 50 meeting last year. We started operations this year. It's a collaboration between 3 United Nations agencies, UNEP, the International Labour Organization, and UNICEF. So we've collaborated together to form the Green Jobs for Youth Pact with the objective of bridging the, creating 1 million jobs globally, greening 1 million jobs globally, and also start supporting 10,000 enterprises in Africa as well. And so for us, we want to harness the opportunities that exist through collaborations. So what we are looking at right now is leveraging on the existing systems, existing business models, and we want to bring them together. We want to bring them together with the aim of accelerating job creation. For instance, this is what currently I'm working on right now. I want to bring accelerator hubs together such that whatever they do, we are able to scale it up higher. Right now, we have a deficit in climate financing in Africa. And this is quite unfortunate because we emit less than 3% of greenhouse gas emissions, and we are the most severely affected, such that on the other hand, we receive less than 5.5% of the global climate financing. You understand that? It's just outrageous. And so for us, we've seen how enterprise support systems work. They look for funds, they get maybe a certain amount of money, but what you want to do is we want to tell them, let's come together, let's join hands, and let's now push for more financing. So as the United Nations want, the Green Jobs for Youth Pact, we want to bring accelerator hubs, we want to bring academia, we want to bring the private sector, we want to bring startups together and tell them this is what you're doing, and we can help you access more financing. We can help you develop business models that are acceptable. We can help you draft good proposals and pitch decks that are acceptable to investors and venture capitalists. So for us, there is an opportunity, and the opportunity is that right now, even in a few weeks' time, we'll have the Africa Climate Summit, whose theme is driving green growth and climate finance solutions for Africa. So in the near future, there's going to be an increase in climate financing in Africa. And we want to spearhead that, and we want the beneficiaries to be the startups in Kenya, in Nairobi, and across Africa. So for me, that is one of the things. It's an opportunity, and we are working on it as at UNEP. Yeah.
I'll ask Murabula this question that I'm building from what Sarah is saying. And she's mentioned and said that looking at the structure of her business, she knows that at Vince Plastic, she needs this type of investment from an investor. But she's not able to tap into it, and they are not able to tap into it because of how their business is structured and how the financing is structured. There is a lot of mismatch. So as an ESO and an expert in the sector, what do you think are the strategies and things that these companies need to do, startups and growth companies like Vince, and they need to do to ensure that they are able to bridge that gap? Because they're struggling to access financing. But we are saying these are the type of businesses we need to fund for them, for us to reach the level of sustainability and green financing that we are looking at.
Yeah, thank you. Probably before I answer that question, I thought I would also take on from the conversation my two colleagues had and talk briefly about the opportunities available for green financing from KCIC. There's one ready opportunity that's going to come up this month. That's what we call the Vijana and Agribiz Challenge. There should be an advert going out within the next 2 weeks. And this will be a call for people, for young people, people below the age of 35, with innovative ideas around agricultural value chains, around agricultural technology, to come forward and apply for the opportunity. If you qualify and you are put in the challenge, you will be supported to refine your ideas. You'll be taken to a boot camp where product development experts will speak to you and then see how you can refine your idea, refine your product. There'll be investment experts speaking to you about how to refine your pitch decks and how to be able to access financing. The winner of that competition will be able to get 1 million Kenya shillings immediately. The runner-up will get 750,000, and then the second runner-up will get 500,000. So that's a ready opportunity that's available. We also have an opportunity for people with good ideas around agricultural value chains. There will be a call for proposals around October, and then we'll provide you the information if you apply, and then you'll go through a due diligence process. And if you're selected, you will then be able to join our programs, and then you'll get support to be able to grow turn your idea into a business and then be able to grow it. Hopefully by end of the year, we'll be launching a program around waste management. So that's also an opportunity. We are hoping to support about 300 enterprises countrywide, and we are looking at a number of things around waste management. We are looking with people with ideas around recycling and basically turning waste into economically attractive products. We are looking for people who can reduce the toxicity within waste. So there's another opportunity. We are looking for people who can then reduce the need, more or less structure out dumping sites and that sort of things. In other words, do a real-time sorting, processing, and recycling of this waste. And then, of course, we have under what we call our Green Biz program, we have opportunities for people with innovative ideas and technologies in renewable energy, in water management, in commercial forestry. So I thought I would mention those opportunities. So how do we then bridge the innovation financing gap? I think that is sort of the question. First of all, I think for an organization like ours, because that's the perspective I want to take, it is always important that let your innovation be economically useful, not just to yourself, but to the country. In other words, you should be able to create jobs. So we look at impact of that innovation and not just do innovation for the sake of it. It needs to solve a real problem. There are two main ones that we look at KCIC. That's one is climate change, so it needs to have climate impact, and then it needs to be able to create jobs, especially for the younger people. So if we can have a conversation around, this is my innovation, this is how it will support the fight against climate change, and this is how it will create jobs, then probably we begin to find a way of supporting you along the continuum, and then you're able to access grants from ourselves, what we call proof of concept funding or early stage funding, and then later on, if the idea grows businesses, then you can be able to access concessionary funding from our sister company KCV, and Victor was also in the panel before, and he's right here. But generally, in this time and age, usually the best way to access funding is to refine your idea and link it to impact. You must link it to some SDG somewhere, because quite a lot of people now don't just want, quite a lot of investors don't just want to provide funding for the funding's sake. They want to provide funding that has meaning, that has an impact for them. So that is important. Have a youth or a gender lens in terms of your innovation. That too could help you access that funding. And the other one is the sort of thing that we are trying to do now, which is basically to provide information. There are lots and lots of funding out there. Actually, most of the time, when you meet financial institution, be they grant makers or be they development finance institutions, be they impact investors, the first thing they tell you is there is funding available. What we don't have are properly structured projects that we can be able to fund, and therefore a proper structure for your project is important in terms of unlocking funding. Thank you.
I'm now thinking, I know Sarah here is thinking, but I'm employing people at the dump site already. I'm using youth to clean. This is me just defining your business model. And I'm already employing them. I have women cleaning these bottles already. And I'm taking away waste from the environment. So I'm doing all this. But when I go back to the market, I have what I keep calling impact investors, but with PE and VC kind of behavior. They're still asking me, but when we look at your numbers, we are looking at exiting in this kind of time. So talk to us in 10 years. So what do you think? And I'll talk to you, Alan. What can a business like Sarah's business and them do to be able to come and get those opportunities? Because this is the challenge, and I can hear what she's saying when she says, I think I have a business model, but accessing financing has become a problem unless I go for the grants, and that is not a sustainable way to build my business. I'm trying to create a commercial case, but every time you come and look at when I go to KCIC, they do the analysis, and we have been struggling for 10 years trying to get me financing because everyone is looking for a certain level of financing. I have gone to Victor, I've now outgrown the financing Victor is giving me. But no one wants to come and take the risk with my business here.
Okay, allow me to go first. And apparently, last week we held a dialogue on creating green jobs through circular waste economies. I don't know whether Vince Plastic was part of that dialogue. It was a webinar. And the chairman of the Kenya Waste Pickers was in that dialogue. And those are some of the challenges they highlighted. And for us as a UNEP, we have a program. We had a program called Switch Africa Green that did a report on financing mechanism for SMEs in Africa. And one of the challenges that they highlighted was accessing finance, especially for green enterprises, because some of these models are social impact models where they tend to be filling gaps which the government has been unable to fulfill. For instance, waste, water and sanitation, and such that you find that those models take a long time to bring in returns. And therefore you find that financiers are averse to investing in them because they say, you're doing good, but where's the return? And so for what there is right now is that what I would advise them is like to focus on impact investors that are agnostic driven, like they are impact investors that solely focus on waste management, businesses, and they have the patience to go through the journey with you. We have one company called Footprints Africa. They are focused on waste management companies. We have other organizations. KCIC he's just mentioned that they have a program coming up. You see, when organizations have such programs, they already have the capacity to walk the journey with people in the waste sector. And so for me, my advice is that, yes, your business model might not bring in returns quickly, but if you network or relate with investors or financiers that are in that sector, they're able to walk the journey with you. They're able to give you patient capital. They're able to, guide you through the journey. They are able to help you and network you such that you're able to bring in returns much more quickly because maybe they have invested in networks in the waste circular economy. Yeah.
I think before I go back to Sarah, I want to go again to you, Joseph, and ask what kind of support exists to businesses that have now, I'm no longer a startup, I'm now going to what we like to call the valley of death. If I don't get anyone to invest in this business is going to die. And I'm here, I have already been given the 5 million ticket, here I'm talking Kenya shillings. I'm past that a little. I need someone to handhold me, be able to develop my business model with me, and go to the next level. So what opportunities exist for those businesses, and how can they tap into them to ensure that they are able to now go next and be able to access the impact investors that have bigger ticket sizes?
Yeah, thank you. We support businesses in that space in 3 ways. The first is we provide mentorship. We get an expert who we pay for ourselves as KCIC to help you in terms of thinking through your business, looking at the challenges within the environment, be there around financing, be there around regulations, be there around market opportunities, be there around ESG, so environment, social governance sort of concerns. What this expert is able to do is that then working with you, come up with solutions that ensure that you don't, you're able to navigate those challenges in a good way and survive. And usually these are usually people within the same business sector as you, so they have gone through this, they have a lot of experience in terms of the challenges you're going through, and therefore are able to support you. Now, the second is we support you with financing, and this is normally grant financing, so you don't necessarily have to pay it back. Sometimes they're straight grants, sometimes they're what we call repayable grants. In other words, you pay it without interest. And this is specifically for two reasons. One is the sort of solutions that your mentor will come up with may require funding. And so if we leave you without that sort of support, then you probably will not be able to access that funding, and you will then not solve the problem that we're trying to solve. So we provide that funding. And in KCIC, we have 3 products around that. We have what we call the proof of concept funding, which is a pure grant. And this can be anything from 10,000 shillings to about 5 million Kenya shillings. It all depends on what your needs are. Then we have what we call early stage financing. Again, this is a grant, but focused more on now trying to scale up you towards commercial stage, basically solving the challenges of the value of death, as Sarah mentioned. And then we have what we call results-based financing. So, and this is financing tailored in milestones. We agree with you that for you to be able to get where you want to get, you have to go through a process, but we break it down into stages and say, for every stage you reach, you unlock a certain amount of funding. And then the final way we support enterprises around that area, around the value of death area, is in terms of what we call product development or access to product information. We have an MOU with KIRDI, the Kenya Industrial Research Development Institute, where we will take you. You'll find experts there who will help you sharpen your product to market acceptance. And then once the KIRDI has supported you to develop this product, then we take you to the Kenya Bureau of Standards and to ensure that whatever standards are available in terms of governing your product are met. And if they are not met, then they will actually train you on how to ensure you meet those products. And that KCIC will pay for. Will pay for that. So with that sort of support, we more or less are hand-holding through mentorship, funding you to ensure you can implement the strategies your mentor comes up with, and the product development and market acceptance support. We ensure that you are able to navigate the value of death and then get to what we call market readiness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to come back to you, Sarah, and ask you, you are no longer a startup. I think my first interaction with this business was when it was starting. And so I want you to speak to what are the strategies do you think you've already been able to raise some financing, you're growing as a business. What are the strategies would you say you used or you've been using to be able to access financing within the sector? You're now looking for the next tier of financing, but there is what you've been able to access.
what would you say were the strategies that you used, and how were you able to align with what was available in the market then for where you were?
On a light note, I need to go and review my MOU with KCIC. I've had some nice things that are not in that MOU. I'll be seeing you later. Yeah, we have an MOU with KCIC just for mentorship and other things. But I think I forgot to write that, but I'll go and rewrite it. That is on a very light note. When they were speaking, I had things I've never had, and things do not apply when it comes to financing. I'll answer your question. The issue with financing waste management, and that brings all compasses of circular economy, is you finance startups, the small people who collect the small volumes. You give them money to buy the waste at. If I'm buying PET kg, you give them money, they'll be able to buy 25. They'll come and tell me they want to buy, they will sell to me at 35 shillings. So when my P&L comes in, then I don't qualify to the basics that you've said. The impact is there. It's well known. I think everyone in this country, in the market, knows the work that Vince Plastic is doing with the youth groups across the country. What we've been able to do, and I'll credit Victoria Commercial Bank, they worked with Vince Plastics from the initial goal. It may have been a painful loan because banks, I don't understand why Kenya Bankers Association doesn't understand financing green projects doesn't need high interest. Our bankers have been our main, can I call them foot soldiers? They've worked with the bank. There's a program we are actually in with the Swedish workplace. It's the bank that recommended us to it. So it's those banks that they've come, seen the work we do, and they're like, these people are doing a better job, just give them money. The other bit is other avenues that we've explored, the plastic credits. We were among the first plastic recycling company to enjoy plastic credits. So that has been one way that we've been able to do that. We've almost signed, we are actually almost signing another one on carbon credits. So that avenue that most companies were shying off away from, it's tedious, it's annoying, and especially because the system requires a formal kind of way of doing business. Here, everything is informal. So the banks, goodwill, and also the founders themselves, that is their own investment. They weren't given any money from anyone. It's the profits, instead of them paying themselves salaries, they just injected the money back to the business. So the banks, other avenues of sourcing for funds through plastic credits, and the founders themselves. And also the relationship, I wouldn't underscore the relationship we have with the persons, the waste aggregators and the waste pickers at the dump sites and any other place. I think our founder has just a way of, I don't have that patience. He has a way of talking to them. And one key last thing is innovation. Plastic waste machinery, recycling machinery is very capital intensive. One washing line, just basic one from China, is going to cost you around 500,000 to 1 million USD, up to docking into the country and everything else. Our founder, he's a genius. If there is any science student, just needs to come and camp in there. We've fabricated our own washing lines from scrap metal. Just that kind of innovation, just to make sure that you reduce on some bit of OPEX. Yeah.
What I'm getting from Sarah is she's saying there's a lot of work, sweat capital that has been put in here. And most of the companies that are coming up and looking for green financing are expecting that this money comes easy because we are saying there is a lot of money. But what I'm hearing from her is before Victoria Commercial Bank came in, there's sweat capital that's going in there. There's being very dynamic as a business because what we are calling green financing is very risky. And when you mentioned Kenya Bankers Association, I remember there is one thing they launched, was it in 2020? The Kenya Green Bonds Initiative, yeah. Someone needs to tell me what happened to that. I have no clue, but there was a good initiative going on. I don't know whether they've done, and I think KCV was part of it. Yes, if I can remember very well. But there's so much that went into it. But I want to go to you, Alan, and talk about the risk factor in financing. And the reason I've asked you is, it's very risky sometimes to invest in this new, what we're calling the new dispensation, green financing, because if I'm building a house, and I'll give that as an example, and I want to go the green way, and I approach my bank, it means the 3-bedroom house that Joseph may use 5 million to build, I might need 8 million, meaning I'm requiring more financing. And the bank looks at me and thinks, this is a bit risky. Why are you talking solar and all recycling of water? You're talking about so much that we are not willing to go into. And credit financing, green financing is risky, and there is need for guarantees to come in this way. And I've seen a lot of that conversation going around in the the UN. So I want you to speak a bit to that in terms of risk and green financing.
Thank you for that. The risk element is mainly because of two issues. First, because they really don't understand the green business models. It's not yet understood completely. So there are a lot of studies going on around understanding the business models, and how then they are going to structure finances such that the returns, the returns match the investments, especially in high impact sectors, but in creating jobs. For us as UN, we want to focus on sectors that have an impact of creating green jobs, but yet are decent jobs. For instance, in the West economy sector is one of the sectors we're focusing on, because there's a high probability of jobs being created, but then again we ask ourselves, because one of the SDGs is creating decent jobs, are those jobs decent in the West circular economy? So we want to understand the business models in the West economy sector, and like she said, it's a little bit complicated, because of the value chain in the Western sector. It's a little bit complicated. And then again, that's one, understanding the business model. There's a studies going on. Number two is in another sector, it's agriculture. The risk element in agriculture is quite high, yet there's so much potential in creating green jobs there and scaling climate smart agriculture enterprises. And unfortunately, the risk element is due to, number one, in agriculture is crop diseases and weather shocks, weather patterns, and banks, especially banks, they are so averse to, financing agriculture enterprises because of those two elements. And apparently a study that we did in the last 5 years, banks have shied away, or rather the risk element is 2 times in the agriculture sector than other sectors, simply because of the climate shocks and crop diseases. And I'm not just speaking from a study perspective, I'm also speaking from a personal perspective. I did agribusiness and I failed terribly, not because of anything, but because of externalities. The climate shock, rainfall. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And so for us, for now to de-risk that, we have now the element of climate smart agriculture. it also requires lots of investments. So for us, we are now studying that at UNEP, and also calling for the private sector now to mobilize finances such that they are able to finance the entrepreneurs. Are they able to finance the infrastructure in terms of when it comes to climate smart agriculture? Because a lot of investment is needed in that, and they are risky. So we also have the element of patient capital, at least to minimize the risk in that sector. So for us, we are looking at the risk elements in agriculture, and also in the waste circular economy, and the risk elements in renewable energy are quite low because most investments have been, like green financing in Kenya, in Africa, have been flowing in clean energy, in clean energy and renewable energy. Yeah.
Are we looking at any credit guarantees coming from that?
From banks, I don't know.
Coming from no, not from banks. Going to the banks when we are trying to de-risk the banks so that we help them and encourage them to fund Vince and others. De-risking, because the reason why the banks, and maybe I can explain a little, the reason why the banks will shy away is, at the end of the day, as an investor of Victoria Commercial Bank, I don't care who you're investing in. At the end of the day, I will come for my return on investment, but I will still have my ESG at the end of the day asking you, the environment and social and governance aspects of your business. But for us to encourage more financial institutions, the MFIs, insurance companies to even take up these insurances for agribusiness, for us to substantially understand and have substantial investment in green financing, then we need an aspect of credit guarantees. And you all, or Murabula can speak to that. What are we seeing in the market, and what do we expect?
Honestly speaking, for us, we can only push that from a policy perspective, but on practicality, only someone who is in the banking sector is able to answer that, or I would want to hand over that, because for us, we push from the policy perspective, yeah.
I'm not in the banking sector, but I'll try. Generally, banks, as he mentioned, try to shy away, either because these enterprises tend to be smaller than they can take on, or tend to be too risky in the sense that, one, the business models are not very well understood, and they are not understood by the bankers themselves. And so if they're not and generally in banking, if you don't understand it, you don't do it. You always err on the side of caution. And so there are a few guarantee schemes that are trying to aggregate in order to get the sort of scale that banks can take on. As KCSC, we are working with the Africa Guarantee Fund to basically de-risk our startups so that then they can be able to access funding from the banks. Because the challenge was these are people who have just gotten from the idea stage, and therefore they are doing turnovers of, say, $20,000 a year, $30,000, $50,000 a year. If you went to the bank, they probably don't have a product for you because you are too small for what they can take on. But if you can do a portfolio level sort of guarantee, which is what we are working on with the Africa Guarantee Fund, then these small institutions are able to be supported.
Okay. Before we go to ask questions, I want to hear the final words from each of you, and I want you to tell me what you see as a future of green financing right now, from where you sit, in terms of a research perspective from UNEP and from you as a sector player now, who is working with innovators every day and in different sectors, and you've seen some come and succeed and outgrow the institution. Others you've handheld for a longer time, and you financed a number of them. And from Sarah, I want to hear from you what the future looks like in your eyes. What are you, in a way, what is the wish list for green financing for you? Because you are the face of the innovator right now. So that's what I want to hear, and we can start with you.
The future is bright. I'll assure you that. One reason is because now we have legal and regulatory frameworks when it comes to waste management. I can't wait for the extended producer responsibility regulations to be signed. Then people within the waste management sector will start making money. For the longest time, they've not been making money. My wish list is, and this I usually say, I would want the ESOs not to fix their mind into one model of financing businesses in the green sector, whether it's a startup, near to death, resurrected, near to death again, and resurrecting kind of business, those kind of growth business. It's because each business has its own different dynamics. The way business is carried out in Nairobi is very different in Mombasa. If we could be agile a little bit, have the fixed things, but looking into the operations, then I think I'll find a way of the Kenya Association of Waste Recyclers will now stop complaining that we are not able to access financing. Yes, and also growth, business who have passed growth also require financing. Literally, every ticket size I see is for startups and not for businesses that are, because anyway, the ticket size are for, because right now I need, if you have lose $3 million, you can see me and we talk.
Sarah has said that the future is bright. I would add and say the future is bright and green. I can assure you the future is green. And for us at UNEP, we forming the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. It's a call for multi-stakeholder collaborations, right from the startups to academia, the private sector, investors, governments, and member states, rather. And so for us, my call right now is to collaborate, come together, see what we can do with leverage on what we already have. We are not trying to do anything new for us as a Green Jobs for Youth Pact. We are trying to scale the existing systems and frameworks that exist, so that at least at the end of it all, in the final analysis, is the entrepreneurs like Sarah who are going to benefit. And my call for startups is to try to formalize your businesses as early as possible. It will save you a lot. Formalize your businesses, no matter how small they are, it will save you a lot. And secondly, align yourself with investor priorities. Understand what the investors need. Different investors have different criteria. If whatever Growth Africa has, maybe it's not what KCIC has, they require different criteria. So align yourself, understand the market, understand the impact investors, what are their funding criteria, and align yourself to that and look for sector-specific impact investors, because it's easier to go there, because they already have the capacity to fund you. So for me, it's just for startups, align yourself with sector-specific impact investors. Thank you.
I need to say that the future is green. And I think everybody around the world, or at least most people, understand that. The world has already decided that climate change is a challenge and it needs to be managed. There are targets to be met in terms of reduction of emissions, of greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore everything needs to be green. In June this year, 2 months ago, when the world leaders met in Paris under the new World Financing Order, and our President Ruto was very vocal at the meeting, one of the things they discussed is how to ensure that the world financial architecture supports green development. So it's clear that the world is moving towards climate resilient kind of development. What we are going to see going forward is that every government regulation that comes out in terms of a policy, in terms of a framework for action, in terms of a regulation, will have something around being green. And so, because of all that, then everybody has got to move in tandem. But on the consumer side, there's a lot of people who are now conscious about green products, and that will push production systems as it were. So as we do our startups, and as we do our innovations, and as we do our product development, I think let's try and ensure that we align ourselves towards being green. Otherwise, the market will disappear from us. So we'll come up with an innovation that cannot serve a human need, because the human needs are moving towards green. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll open it up if there are any questions from the ground.
Good morning once again, everyone. My question is on the green innovation space. My question is, how do you protect green innovators from their ideas being stolen? Because you've said there's a competition of sorts. So what happens to the runners-up, to the other people who had great ideas, but they didn't make the cut? You know, my background is in media, and there's usually some intellectual property stolen, which I think can apply also in the green innovation space. So how do you ensure that the ideas are not stolen, and also they are able to benefit? Because we can have like 100 entries or 1,000 entries, and they're like 10 or 20 good ideas. So how do you protect them? And my other question is, on that other point, there's actually a story I saw some time back, I don't remember where, about some innovator who actually had a good idea, came from the diaspora, implemented a food waste management plant, and then there was frustration from the government. So also on policies, how can we create better policies to support green innovation? And my last question is, how do you get into the green innovation space? Because maybe as an individual, or there's someone just sitting there and asking, like, I'm really interested in climate change and changing the environment and being an innovator or getting into the space. But there's an assumption that it's probably you have to write these huge proposals, like grant proposals to the big organizations. And what are the resources you might suggest for someone who wants to get into the green innovation space? Thank you.
I think we first take those ones. I will direct the intellectual property question to you, Murabula, because I know there's something that binds KCAC on that, so you can respond to it.
Yeah, thank you, Pauline. Yes, the issue around protection of innovation is key, because we know that a lot of work goes into coming up with these ideas. I would imagine that by the time you probably get this idea on paper, you've probably had 20 or 30 brainstorming sessions just to be able to come in. So that sweat capital, as Sarah called it, must account for something. What we do is that our model is online. The way you present your ideas is through an online portal. And if you don't qualify to join us, you can be sure that information is kept confidential. Nobody will be able to use it. It will not be shared with everybody. But if you join the KCSE program, then we have a lawyer that we normally work with who will support you in terms of intellectual property protection. They will register your trademark if it's a trademark. They'll register your copyright if that is what is needed. So as soon as you join our program, we then put you in touch with the IP lawyers. We have a panel of them, and then they'll be able to take you through the process that you need to be able to protect your innovation and what sort of safeguards are necessary. And all that is, of course, is support from KCSE. KCSE is what pays for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think I will direct the question on policy to you, Alan. She's asked what is being done on policy. I know there is a lot that can be spoken to, but I'll just ask you to just mention one. There's quite a lot that you're already doing to influence policy, national policy on green financing and issues on climate change. Maybe mention something on it.
Okay, thank you for that question. Right now, what we're doing is focusing on policy implementation. We had a dialogue last week with people from the West Circular economies. And one of the things that they raised, one of the issues they raised is that there are a lot of policies that have been, formulated, but they need to be implemented. So right now we are focused. She's talked one of the policies she's been waiting for. Right now we are pushing for policy implementation. And for instance, next week there will be the Africa Ministerial Conference on Environment next week in Ethiopia. And they said right now we're done with the policy formulation. Let's implement the existing policies such that the transition to a low carbon economy is achieved as fast as possible, such that when it comes to the financial green finance flows, it's accelerated as fast as possible. So we have come to realize that we are always looking for new things, new ideas, but we've not exhausted the existing policies. We've not implemented the existing policies. So for us right now, it's policy implementation. Thank you.
I can just add, as a policy maker myself, I've written some of them, so I feel attacked. It's not good. The Sustainable Waste Management Act and the Sustainable Waste Management Policy are at par. Okay? Nothing else. Equal to the EPA for the US with its off-flows is at par. The extended producer responsibility regulations at par, beats Europe's actually. Right now, it's hash. I don't know why Treasury is doing this thing, hash, chini ya maji. They are doing something on green financing, a policy on green financing. So some of us in the West sector, we weren't aware of it. So we are just coming to be a part of it right now. So the issue is the country has perfect policies. It's the implementation bit of it. So it's not that we are lacking policies. It's also that even the implementer, the regulator, sometimes is not even aware of the policies that are actually have been done. So look out on the green, the one being done by the National Treasury on green bonds and green financing. Your question about getting into this business of green and everything else, I'll give you an example of waste management. Where do you live? You can start a small collection center and educate people on waste segregation at source. You look for junkie beans or whoever else who does organic waste, sell to them the organic waste. Look for me, for the plastics, look for Mokomaya or Kitengela glass for glass, look for someone else who does aluminum. You're already in the green business. Thank you.
Thank you for.
So, yeah, perhaps if you just allow me, the policy is very, very important to ensure that these startups succeed. As KCIC, all our programs have a policy component, so we are always working with the county governments and the national government around bills that you see in parliament, around bills that go to the county assemblies to ensure that they are supportive of the business. And we always get this information from the enterprises that we support. Just as an announcement, the extended producer responsibility regulations are now out. They are for public participation. So kindly look for them, read through and see what what your comments should be, and then take them forward. Just thank you.
Thank you. I think we can go on, but we don't have more time. We are way beyond our time. So thank you so much to my panel and for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists as they take their seats. We will now call upon Suleiman, who is going to present a short presentation on sustainability. Suleiman Ubad from Breakout Limited. Presentation on how millennials are changing the future of business to be green. Let's give him a round of applause as he comes up.
Hello, everyone. Just walk in. Hello, everyone. I probably won't. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I think it's 12 p.m. already, so good afternoon. Okay, then, can I have the presentation up? Okay. So, my name is Suleiman Rahman. I'm from Nigeria. I run a renewable energy startup, and I've been in the green space for roughly 5 years now, and I've come to understand the various dynamics of this industry, from the customers to the funders to the startups themselves. And I've been advocating a lot in the green space for adaptation. But in the end, what controls everything is demand and supply. It all comes back to basic economics. If consumers want a product, if consumers want a service, the service will exist. So by show of hands, how many of us here are millennials or Gen Z? I'm Gen Z. I'm sure I'm the only one here. So millennials and Gen Zs are quite different from what we're used to, from boomers or Generation X, etc. They're experience different. They're connected generation. They're people who understand what third world countries are going through, especially people in Europe. They have climate consciousness. They have environmental consciousness. They understand the need for equality, the need for stable work environments, and many other basic socioeconomic systems that should exist for communities. So millennials and Gen Zs are very different to the ideal customers that people knew over 20 or 30 years ago. And how they think and how they behave directly influences our businesses. And we must find ways that we can align ourselves with how they're thinking. A lot of millennials and Gen Zs educate themselves online. A lot of things they know is online. In the past, it was majorly books and many other things, but today, a huge chunk of those communications and learning happens online. They're extremely connected with technology. They use technology in their daily lives. We use technology in our daily lives way more than others, and the technology we use influences our behaviors. And one of the other major areas that I'll be talking about today is spending habits. Millennials and Gen Z spend their money in very different ways than the other parts of our population. To go into that, with the internet existing, how companies are able to get their products marketed, branded, and able to reach the final consumer has changed. Whatever information a company is able to put out dictates how well their product performs. And if you're marketing or trying to sell your products to millennials and Gen Zs, well, the internet is the way to go. And knowing what type of information to pass across is even more important. How we spend is very different. The reason I buy a pair of Nike shoes or a Puma shoe, I'm not affiliated with any of those companies, I hope no one is here, is very different. Why I'll buy a bag of cheese flakes over another bag of cheese flakes are various factors, which I'll get into just in a moment. Currently, 80% of brands that millennials buy from are impact brands. Brands that have some sort of corporate social responsibility, some sort of ESG-related value to the society. If they're either improving the welfare of people in third world countries, or they have embedded sustainable processes, inputs, etc., in their manufacturing and service delivery. Millennials and Gen Zs will buy more from impact brands, but it has to meet 3 major criteria, which is quality, price, and impact. If an average millennial Gen Z is given an option to buy a pair of jackets like this, and one is made and is high quality, has price, and has been told, well, this is made using 30% processed fibers or agro-fibers or whatever, he's most likely going to buy from that brand. And that's very important because as companies, we have to find ways to be able to highlight those areas that are sustainable, that we have created, that are sustainable in our processing. Because those are the areas that this part of our population, this huge chunk of our population today are concerned about. That's what they're looking at when they want to buy, when they want to spend. We're having the highest transfer of wealth generation in this century, moving to the millennials in trillions of dollars, according to many sources. So as companies, we must gear ourselves and appeal ourselves to how the Gen Zs and millennials want to spend their money, and they really want to spend their money on more sustainable, impact-focused brands. 8 out of 10 millennials seek solutions that provide, make lives better, as I've said earlier. 60% are willing to pay more for sustainable brands. And that's actually one area that a lot of people don't even know. A lot of times people are concerned that, sustainable products, people don't want to pay, etc. But the data suggests otherwise, actually. Especially in Europe, if you're exporting products, you should know that millennials and Gen Zs are actually willing to pay more, so you can actually charge a premium. And a lot of times, creating sustainable products can be expensive. So that's actually what leads to the products being expensive, but the data is suggesting that people are willing to pay more. Times have changed. In the past, people were given a lot of funding, charity to NGOs, but today, the emergence of social enterprises is really changing the tides of business. People will rather purchase and patronize companies and brands that in the core of their existence, they're adding a net positive impact to the environment or society rather than giving funding to charities. And I'm not saying charities are not good, but the way people are spending their money is changing, and we must be able to position ourselves strategically to be able to benefit from that. So how did we get here? As I've said, people became more environmentally conscious, people became more empathic, they understood what's going on in other parts of the world, what's happening to our environment, climate change, global warming. So people are becoming more conscious. And with all the advocacy that has been done in terms of global warming awareness, etc., people are more in tune with how are they living their lives? How are they making an impact to the environment, to their livelihood? Checking your carbon footprint, your hours of flight, and many other things, how many mileage you have in your cars. So people are becoming more conscious to be more environmentally, have a lesser carbon footprint, essentially. So we can see big brands who are taking the leap in trying to position themselves in this new dynamic of business. Looking at Nike saying they're making shoes with 60%, that have 60% less waste, and many other companies that are leading the way, which is a huge opportunity for all of us to be able to tap in Africa as an emerging ecosystem. There are many other startups doing that. There are startups there are restaurants who are offering meals. For every meal you buy, another free meal goes to someone in a third world country or some orphanage somewhere. So people want to feel good when they're buying products and when they're using services, that I'm not just consuming something that's affecting the environment, but my consumption is actually leading to a net positive impact somewhere, somehow. And that's the opportunity that as business owners and entrepreneurs, we should try to create for customers to be able to feel. This is another example, Impact Coffee, which also gives extra meals for every cup of coffee you buy. And this is one of the reasons they're able to have an accelerated startup growth, as a lot of customers are becoming very geared towards businesses like this. And more locally, we have a company called Pine Kazi in Kenya, who are making shoes out of pine leaves. Now, this is what I've been saying about local innovation, tapping and strategically positioning themselves in this emerging economy, and they're growing through, and there are many areas for innovation and where we can be able to bring out the value to customers, both locally and internationally. Aspire Food Group, another company, a major one in the insect protein company. I'm sure a lot of black soldier fly has been mentioned today. Cricket is also another source of animal protein. This is also one of the companies that have also positioned themselves to be a sustainable brand, and a brand that's not just for profit, but also for impact. So having that balance is very, very important. The future of business is social enterprises. That's what I believe in. As the world is moving towards more climate crisis is getting much more intense, we must find a way that we can build businesses that we're able to build businesses that are sustainable for the environment, and we're able to ensure that consumers know about these values and want to patronize our products. As I've already mentioned quite earlier, the future is social enterprises. And a lot of times people feel you're either some green company that's barely having a reasonable profit margin, or you're some big manufacturing firm or whatever that is racking in the gains. But I believe there is a possibility to be able to find a balance. You can still make a huge impact on communities across the world and still be very, very profitable. I think that's where innovation comes into play. But this whole concept that you can balance the two is not possible, it's actually quite possible. From the fundamentals, from even the scratch of how we build businesses, we must build businesses that its core existence is a business that makes impact, whether the business wants it or not, right? So there's something that we should do. So what can you do? You can start patronize companies creating sustainable products. You can start your own startup. Some people were looking for guidance to be able to start their companies. You can create companies that are for profit, for impact, making sustainable products. And there's a huge market, and the market is only growing, with millennials and Gen Zs being a huge part of our purchasing population. I've spent the past 5 years building sustainable brands. I've done that in Nigeria, and I'm hoping that others here can emulate and try to spread the word across. Social enterprises, for-profit, for-impact businesses are here to stay, and they're the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. That was an incredible, just, wrapping up the session and showing us where we are today. I want to say a very big thank you for all of you that made it today. As we wrap up, in addition to what has been said by the two panels and what has been said by Suleiman, what is the state of sustainability in Kenya? We've heard about the policies that are coming up. We see that the Central Bank of Kenya, about 2021, was able to put out strong recommendations for non-financial reporting. Right, that every financial services industries, financial services sector is expected to emulate. It's still very strongly recommended, but within time it's going to become law. Then we've seen the Nairobi Securities Exchange partnering with GRI on ESG reporting. And every company that's now listed on Nairobi Securities Exchange must be able to provide, alongside financial reporting, non-financial reporting. And when you say non-financial reporting, it's about sustainability, impact, all the things that these organizations are doing to support livelihoods, to deal with climate change and the like. Then we've seen our current government, Kenya Kwanza government, being very particular on climate action, and actually a trailblazer in Africa in leading how Africa approaches climate action and how we position Africa not as victims of climate change, but as opportunity in our manpower, the millennials and Gen Zs that Suleiman is talking about, but the vast land. We have the second lung of the world in Africa, being the Congo forest. How do we position Africa for manpower, for cleaning the air, and then thirdly, for the potential that we have in carbon harvesting, for energy to be able to bring manufacturing into this. So as an emerging market, it's not just about the people we have. We have vast lands that can be used for manufacturing, but being that we are suffering the most with carbon emissions, we are now introducing carbon capture and carbon harvesting that is going to be translated into energy to create for us at manufacturing. And the conversation that's going to be happening first week of September for Africa Climate Week, that's a lot of the conversation is going to be talking about that. So this government has made sure that climate action has become central and the money is following, okay? So this is the right time to figure out what your business models are on that. Then what is Nairobi County doing? During the opening ceremony of this Innovation Week, Governor Sakaja announced that between, Thika Road, between Utalii and Mathare Hospital, that is a 10-acre land there that they're going to be building an innovation development center. So for your capital-intensive manufacturing businesses, business models that you do not know where to get machinery from, capital from, they're going to be housing those machinery there to ensure that your work is easier as you're dealing with your innovations, and it's also accessible and it's also cheaper. So Nairobi County, this is the first Innovation Week that they've had in forever. It shows you the commitment that the Nairobi County government has in innovation, in supporting innovators, and in supporting entrepreneurship. Then lastly, when you look at the state of sustainability, we've heard there are proper policies in place. It is the implementation that is the key. So I'm calling upon all of us as the members of this ecosystem where you run your business, apply those policies. We've heard today that the problem with our entrepreneurs, we don't want to put in sweat equity. We don't want to do the tedious things. I encourage all of us to do those tedious things as entrepreneurs so that we are able to actually assign that. How do we align for sustainability? We've talked about SDGs. I think KCIC talked a lot about SDGs. And then we've been talking about, governance. We've been talking about consumers. So what is your stakeholder approach? Who are you considering as your stakeholders? One thing that we often forget is that the environment is a key stakeholders in our enterprises. If we do not take care of the environment, then we do not have an environment to run those businesses. As we are right now, any liquidity is being redirected to food security, okay, because of the effects of climate change. So we must consider the environment in how we run our businesses, in the specific facilities that we operate in, but also as a planet at large. Now, how do we support? Everybody that has been here today except Sarah is a part of the Entrepreneurship Support Organization. In Nairobi, we have resources more than enough to support you entrepreneurs. At the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, we have a large membership that gives financial and non-financial support. Note, our website is nde.org. Get on our website subscribe to our newsletter. Our newsletter will have opportunities of the programs that Ian has talked about, the programs that KCAC has talked about, the programs that KVC has talked about. These resources will be able to be helpful to you. Follow all those organizations that are here on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. Follow them. They are consistently posting these opportunities, and these opportunities are open for you. But only join if you're willing to do the work. Come if you're willing to do the work. And if you're willing to do the work, you will emerge successful. At Andy itself, where we are a network of organizations that support small and growing businesses, we have an opportunity that's coming up. We've just been funded by the IKEA Foundation for around 2 of our program from the research that we had, and we're going to be having an action lab. An action lab is where we call upon entrepreneurs to come together, and then they are able to identify a solution. We'll be concentrating specifically on waste management, and then we will ideate a technical solution. It will run about 6 months. So when that call of application comes, apply. Because with Andy's programs comes with regranting facilities that give you a grant to scale your business. Not debt, a grant. That is an amazing opportunity for your business. So get connected with ESOs. As an entrepreneur, you're not alone. There's a lot of ESOs out here that are willing to help you. Get plugged in. If you have any questions, write to us on LinkedIn, follow us, Francis or myself. Maureen here will be able to help. Any of the panelists will be able to help. But get connected, plug in, get the help that you need so that we set you up to receive this money that would de-risk you so that you can be able to find more easily accessible, maybe debt financing to scale you. All right? So that brings us to the end of this session. It was incredible to have both panels. It was incredible to have you, Suleiman, talking about how sustainable, millennials and Gen Zs are the next frontier and how to approach them. So even ESOs need to organize themselves as such. And that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. Again, any support you need, any questions that you may have. I have interacted with a few of you asking, oh, you said Andy gives us financing, and I'm redirecting you back to an ESO who will help you figure out your business model, who will help you figure out your strategy, your route to market, all that, so that you are ready. Si vizuri kureceive pesa na uwezi manage. Sindio? So they give you the money, they first help you get ready for the money, and then they work with you to implement that money well. So you're not alone, and you're working very closely with Nairobi County, with Victor Ogola, to ensure that you guys get all the support, and not just for today, but continuing forward. Thank you very much. This is the end of this sustainability session, and have a good rest of the day. But before we break forth, I'd like to ask all the panelists to come up here on the stage so that you can take a group photo, and then we'll also take another one with everyone in the room, if that is possible. Thank you so much, and God bless you all. Panelists, please.
Sorry, then you never can smile. There's never enough, is there?